Yeah, essentially, the way you support alternate hardware is you add bar clamps for that hardware.
Yep.
And that's how we did the HP.
And those bar clamps are largely based on chef recipes, and there are a lot of chef recipes out there for configuring a variety of different machines.
That's correct.
Including Dell.
Right. In the case of HP,
that one could build on instead of starting from scratch.
Right. Yeah. We didn't have to start from scratch. It largely had to do with the differences between the BIOSes, between the different, the motherboards essentially are slightly different, and the IPMI implementations are slightly different. You know, it's great to have standards, right?
With extension. Are your bar clamps somewhere publicly available, or were they?
I'm not sure. I have to check with the person who wrote it, which was, what's his name? From Medicare. But
Thank you very much. Hold on, we got one more question here from.
He was planning on.
Actually, one quick question: what kind of hardware were you targeting? Specifically, HP or?
No specific hardware. I'm just looking at just how sensible it was for other hardware. I personally have 2 Dell workstations, so I'm a big fan of Dell, but working with clients that use other vendors' hardware.
Took a couple days.
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple of days. In terms of effort. In terms of effort
to build a bar clamp from.
Yeah, it took us a little while to figure it out because this was done a few months ago, and I think the documentation and a lot of stuff was a little more primitive then. But yeah.
So sorry, Mike. I think
effort to build a BIOS and a modified BIOS and RAID bar clamp for another vendor.
Yes, that's
okay. Good. And okay, you're available online. That's it. Hold on. Got another question here. Yeah, I want to take your slide where you have all those components, and it's kind of a busy slide. But I'm trying to understand when the deployment for the other layers gets on there. Like you called one node MySQL, but were you actually loading SQL on that image? And then maybe when does the Apache get loaded? When does the programming support languages get loaded? Do they get loaded by Crowbar, or is that some other deployment?
Yeah, you're referring to this slide. Yeah, so Crowbar does all the deployment of the initial pieces that you see here, all the physical resources, DNS, logging, NTP, all of those pieces are done by Crowbar. So they're Crowbar bar clamps. So if you go take a look at the UI, you will see that there are a whole bunch of bar clamps under Crowbar. But see, all of these bar clamps are installed in as part of the initial Crowbar deployment.
But just to clarify one thing, we believe in modularity. So there's actually a file that contains the default Crowbar proposal that basically says what all gets installed inside of Crowbar and what all gets installed when a new node automatically gets added. So we've heard people, for example, that would much rather use Munin rather than Nagios because they like it better. You can very easily tell Crowbar, don't install Nagios. I have my own favorite monitor. Munin is a Perl-based monitoring solution, very similar to Nagios, but with slightly different choices. Some people like it much better. We have an out-of-box experience that you get by default that you can very easily change. Does that answer your question?
Can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Once it's installed, so you have some options for
We didn't get that question at all. Can you please repeat it, please?
Yes, I think that what I understand from what you said was that it's variable right now. There's a difference of opinion as to what Crowbar can install, but has install those higher layers if you so choose. Is that correct?
So when you talk about the higher layers, do you mean Nagios Ganglia, those, or Nova Swift?
Okay, I'm talking about like the web service, the higher languages, Windows, Python, PHP, Perl, those guys. When do they get installed? When does MySQL get installed? Or is that an option?
It is an option. I actually installed it.
Right. So are you asking about the admin node itself, or the nodes being deployed as part of the environment?
Yeah, I'm talking about installing a fully capable node. Let's say I have some application software that runs off, browser stuff, web service. When does it even install all that stuff so I could just start using my software application layer?
So, so what we're doing right now in this demo and these sessions, we're installing OpenStack. So the application that's being installed is effectively OpenStack.
So Crowbar doesn't do it.
And Crowbar does that, right? So at the end of the demo, what you have right now is you have Nova fully functioning with the Nova dashboard across the various VMs that we're using to simulate physical servers. If you want to deploy your own application that uses Apache and uses any kind of LAMP stack, you can do it goes a little beyond what we're trying to achieve today, but you could use chef recipes to kickstart your environment to deploy your favorite version of PHP or Ruby or whatever into either VMs or physical servers. And you can reuse bar clamps or cookbooks for MySQL and Apache and so on. On the admin node itself, what comes with Crowbar proper, we do internally use Nginx. Actually, we do internally use Rails. We don't actually rely on any database. We use long story. So the admin node, we are somewhat opinionated about what needs to be there and what not. So that gets installed as part of the Crowbar admin node installation. On target nodes, we only install the base operating system, just enough operating system to run Chef client. So that requires a version of Ruby and a version of Chef client. That needs to work together. Beyond that, you can deploy onto those nodes whatever your heart contents.
So as an example, we use Crowbar to deploy an entire big data solution, which is the other solution we have as part of our group, which is it deploys all the pieces for Hadoop and all the Cloudera pieces that are needed to get a big data solution up and running. So that's an entirely different application, but Crowbar is able to get all those pieces provisioned and installed on top of and again, the same sort of bare metal provisioning happens. You get all of your hardware installed, and then on top of that, you decide what application pieces you want and create the bar clamps for those and deploy them accordingly. So in short, you can have Crowbar deploy almost anything you want.
I have a question.
Yes.
How close are you to getting Crowbar to work with the Folsom release of OpenStack?
I thought it was.
Well, so right now, SX was just released last month, so we are getting the SX release out pretty soon. We are in the final stages of testing and validation and all that. Folsom is still in development.
One of the things that is on our roadmap that we're still trying to prioritize, and be interesting to hear opinions, is the ability to pull from trunk. So right now, we assume people want to deploy into production or production-like environments. People who deploy into those environments typically want to use packaged, supported versions of OpenStack, versions that will have security patches applied to them, that are built from stable branches that don't move as fast as trunk. However, Crowbar is a great environment for things like CI testing for OpenStack. And you don't typically get packages as quickly as you get pushes into Garrett. So So that was the long version of saying not right now, but we're definitely thinking about being able to build from trunk, partly in order to support things like CI proposal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I just have a real Nova instance up and running here. So I just deployed from bare metal, basically in this case VMs, but I started from scratch, installed configured the hardware, installed a Nova node, installed a controller node, and now I have the Nova dashboard up and running. And I just went ahead and created an instance, a VM instance here. So I'll just show that real quick before we end here for the next session. So I can go ahead and launch a new instance. We have already an image of 11.04 Ubuntu, so I can launch a new instance. I can call the instance Tom, and I can decide what flavor I want, tiny, small, medium, large. I'll pick tiny. I have already created a key pair earlier, so that I select that and then go ahead and launch the instance. So that'll give me my VM that I can use for whatever application I want to deploy on top of it. So that's the short version of the typical demo I do, which includes 3 or 4 nodes for Nova, a couple of nodes for Swift, and the entire thing can be brought up in under an hour and a half. And you can do the same thing with real bare metal servers, actual servers too. This was a challenge that we had when we first started on this project. It's just a lot of work to get this level of automation and operational, best practices codified in a tool and in a framework that you can use and extend and build up your own cloud environment in a very accelerated fashion.
When you look at everything you learned, if I'm bringing new hardware in, then is the real effort in building the new bar clamps? Because really, I wouldn't have to change anything else except the bar clamp.
That's correct, yes. So every other bar clamp is already tested and has been used in other environments, so we can potentially use that.
I want to join the expert one.
Okay. All right. So with that, we will end this demo session. We'll be waiting for the next speaker, who is actually a partner, Morph Labs. Just want to make sure he's online. Yoram, are you online?